Yo, what's happening? It's Gareth, and welcome to today's live event. I'm super excited to jump into today's interview. I am talking to Araminta Barbour. Araminta, I'm just going to get her bio up here. Araminta is a sacred sexuality and relationship coach, an international speaker, and seminar facilitator focusing on tantric and shamanic tools of manifestation. She's a lead facilitator with ISTA, which is the International School of Temple Arts. She's the co-founder of the Women Who See in the Dark retreats, founder of the Sanctuary Guatemala, which is also my home, and the creator of the Resilience Journey. Araminta has spent the past 10 years leading groups in over 20 countries to step into their power and mastery and heal from their past traumas. Today, Araminta and I are going to be talking about love and relationships, a topic that she's an expert on, as you can hear from her bio, as well as how the law of attraction is playing an active role in our relationships all the time. And so I'm super excited to bring Araminta onto this show and to ask her some questions about how we can use the law of attraction to bring relationships into our life. And she's going to share the three biggest mistakes that she sees with people that are using the law of attraction or potentially blocking themselves from bringing the right relationships into their life. This is a special episode for me as well because Araminta is also my partner, and we've been together for the last almost 18 months, and it's been a super amazing journey. As you can imagine, being in partnership with somebody that has so much skill in this area has been super rich. We have applied many of the tools that we're going to be talking about here today into our relationship, and it's been a really, really powerful journey. And I'm so excited to introduce Araminta to you. And I'm just going to see if I can turn this off, hide that. Hello, love.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be in this law of attraction group talking about a topic that I'm so passionate about with you.
So maybe you want to just quickly give us a little bit of a background as to the type of work that you do and the type of processes that you go through with clients. I just read through your bio and unpacked a little bit about who you are and your history, but give us a sense of what ISTA is about, the journey that you've been on with ISTA, and the role that it's played in your life.
Okay, yeah. ISTA is a school that teaches in over 40 countries a year, and I'm very grateful to be a part of it. We focus on teaching transformational skills and tools to support people to really come into their fullness, their power, their mastery. And one of the areas we focus on is around sexuality and relationships, because we recognize that for most of us, this is an area that is vital. You know, it's such a key part of the human experience, but the education we got and the culture that we live in is pretty wounded in this area. And so many of us aren't in our mastery, aren't in our ease. There's a lot of shame, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of guilt, and there's a lot of longing. So part of being in the ISTA trainings, which are sort of week-long residential retreats, is this opportunity to support people to really come home to themselves and learn to love what I call the human technology, that we have this incredible power. Sorry, I have a little pussycat that's attacking my headphones. Learning the fullness of our human technology, learning to fall deeply in love with their creative power, and doing the healing work from any painful and traumatic experiences that may be lodged in their energetic fields that are preventing them from currently living a whole life.
Yeah, what we're going to unpack today is such a rich topic. It's been I've been on an ISTA training. It was something that happened a couple of weeks after I first met Araminta, where she was facilitating it, and I can put that down as probably one of the most meaningful gifts that I've given to myself. And the work that ISTA does around this sometimes sensitive topic has had deep healing for me, because I was in a place in my life where I was using my intimate relationships as a way to bypass maybe some trauma in my life, something like that, seeking validation through my intimate connections. And being on a week-long ISTA retreat has been a powerful journey for me, and it's such a rich topic. What I'd like to just get a sense of from everybody watching is, first of all, let us know in the comments right now where you're tuning in from, and also let us know if you have any questions. We're going to unpack. We're trying to find a structure for this really big topic. And what we decided to do was unpack the 3 mistakes that Araminta sees most commonly in the work that she does, where people potentially block themselves from manifesting their ideal partnerships, and where that comes from. And we're going to start there, but we also may have some space for some questions. So if you've got any questions about love, relationships, getting over your ex, can you use the law of attraction to get my ex back, etc., please post that in the comments, and we'll unpack those at the end if we've got a little bit more time. Also, to let you know, the depth of this topic is vast. There's so much to uncover here. For many of us, we are trying to unpack years and years and years of stories around our intimate connections around sexuality, and the way that we've been taught this stuff hasn't always been the most adult way to learn about it. And so 60 minutes that we're going to have now to unpack this is not going to be a huge amount of time, but we have at the end of this a link to another event that we're going to be doing, and we'll get into that a bit later. But maybe, Araminta, you can start with what are the first mistakes that you see people maybe repeating, or patterns that you see and relating that we can share with our viewers now, that they can potentially identify in themselves or see where it might be happening in their lives?
Sure. Really, the first mistake I see many of us fall into is the first one, right at the beginning. It's not clearly identifying our true desires. And what I mean by that is, it's sort of an assumption that we want to be in relationship. It's such an assumption that most of us don't fully question what our unique reasons and values about relationships really are. There's also immense kind of cultural pressure to fit into certain boxes around what that relationship may look like. Now, I think being alive on the planet at this time, this generation, we've actually been given more freedom than ever before to really redefine what loving relationship means to you. And with that freedom comes great responsibility to actually take that time and to really dive inside our hearts and listen to what is our unique expression. What are we really calling in? And not just to assume that we know what that is without giving it some thought. So the reason I start there is because I really love to encourage all of you now is, as we go through our life, different things have more importance. And when we come to meeting somebody, we often are trying to force each other into boxes to become kind of like the missing jigsaw puzzle pieces. And if we're not very clear, if we haven't taken the time to identify what we most value, what our deal breakers are, and be genuinely curious of what the other person's values and deal breakers are, we're often not building foundations based on that self-knowledge and that deep, genuine interest in the other person's core truth. If you look at today's glossy magazines and kind of mainstream sort of dating and relationship advice, the messages that we mostly get from our culture is how to put on some kind of mask in order to get the other person, or like to get love or to find love, as if love is some sort of Easter egg hunt that we're all on. And obviously it's been painted in this fairy tale way. There's a huge ideal that if we find this Easter egg, that then it's going to mean sort of eternal happiness. I did a kind of upward line. And a lot of us have kind of become so ingrained in that belief system. So unfortunately, what we're taught through the glossy magazine articles is the subtext message is, I'm not good enough as I am. I have to mask up. I have to pretend in order to get you. And really what that messaging is, whether that's, wear this makeup, buy this car, use these lines, call once, then don't call, whatever, all these strategies. And really every kind of strategy that's not authentic is basically underlining the core belief that I'm not lovable as I am. And of course, those of you that are interested in the law of attraction, you know that one of the key principles of the law of attraction is like attracts like. That we want to be vibrating with the emotion, the energetic vibration of what we want to attract. And if we're coming from a place of feeling deeply unlovable, the chances are we're going to constantly manifest relationships which aren't loving at their root. We're going to continue to reinforce experiences in our life that bring us back to these core wounds that actually, I'm not lovable. So that's a couple of them actually in there. But I would say self-knowledge and giving yourself real time to identify what kind of relationship you really desire and why. Like, what are the values underpinning that desire for you at this point in your life? Do you understand what those are for you now?
What about owning desires when you get into a new connection? Have you got some reference points or some tools that you can share with people that when you get into a new connection or an existing connection, even to be able to really own your desires? How does that look?
Well, one of the keys here is what prevents most of us from owning our desires, even if we've taken the time to identify them for ourselves, is fear of rejection. And again, the dating the dating game is kind of set up like a conquest in some way. So we are often prevented from being authentic because we think the other person may not like our truth and therefore will reject us. So until you have some tools to understand how to receive no's and be able to receive that as a gift, actually, rather than a self-rejection piece that crushes us. And also we need skills to be able to understand our emotional body. And I'll come back to that because it's such a big piece. But authenticity, I think there's a point in our journey of self-love where we recognize we love ourselves enough that we start to become more honest. And we recognize that actually, as I love myself and my own weird, quirkiness, I love my truth. And I want to meet someone authentically. I want to find out their truth. And I don't want to waste time because life is so precious. We want to be met authentically. I don't even want to, if it's not your truth right now to be on this free call, then don't be on this call. As we get more mature in our self-love, we recognize we only want to meet people at that full heaven yes. And I think as you really start to appreciate yourself and appreciate the preciousness of your attention, your life force, it's easier to be more real and more authentic, more honest. And when you're vibrating in that way, people tend to be more honest to you, rather than the game that the glossy magazines try to tell us of, I'll put on my pretend mask and I'll meet your pretend mask. And then, 6 months down the line, it'll all kind of start to fall apart. So, in ISTA, we teach a certain kind of communication. That's the RBDSM. It's kind of, I'm pretty sure you've done a live on it somewhere. It's like shorthand. It's a shorthand way for what are the key questions to talk about before moving into erotic intimacy with someone, or emotional intimacy with someone, hopefully both. And that really is about getting very clear on, kind of what agreements you have. What are you looking for? What's the desire behind this particular experience? What my needs are, what your needs are, health and safety desires. And a lot of people avoid having those conversations because there's just shame. There's just a general immaturity in all of us. We're still kind of like giggling behind the bike sheds when we talk about sexuality and relationship. But if you get practiced, and all it is practice, and the more you practice it and you see and you feel how much, spaciousness and ease that brings into the body and into the communication, and how much information and trust actually that it develops between you and the other person that supports whatever is meant to unfold. And that actually, if something comes to the surface, that actually means, oh, well, maybe that's not a match. Then how grateful we can be that we discovered that. So again, it's linked to wanting to trust life and trust your truth. Once you've identified your core values, then you only want to be with matches. We don't want to lie, cheat, and sneak and convince each other into things that aren't authentically my truth or your truth. That the sweet spot that we're really all seeking comes from this alignment.
That resonates with me so much. I mean, I know we've spoken about this at length before in our personal connection, but it's really something that was true for me. This part of being able to really be able to own exactly what it was that I wanted. And I having got this now, it's landed for me in such a strong way that as soon as you're able to own your desires and own what's true for you, you by default are moving into authenticity. And by the nature of law of attraction, you can only attract other people that are in their authenticity at the same level. And sometimes the part for me that I blocked in this was exactly what you unpacked, this idea of rejection, this part of like, I sort of want this to happen, but if I owned my true desires about what I really wanted, maybe I'd get a no, and I would be rejected, and then the fear of that happening would just be too much, and I would sort of tell a half truth or not really own my desires, which kept me from my authenticity. So it's a powerful one. To move into authenticity is to own desires. What's the second thing that you see coming up quite a lot in relating mistakes people make?
Particularly around the law of attraction. It's this lack of understanding around whether we're coming from scarcity or whether we're coming from abundance. So it's really an energetic piece. And what I witness is that a lot of us are we've identified, okay, I want my ideal relationship. And maybe I'm writing down a big long list of qualities and attributes that I want the other person to have, right? And maybe I'm visualizing it and I'm focusing on it. I'm not saying don't do that, but I feel like there's deeper pieces to the puzzle. Usually, again, it's like, who am I? So instead of putting the gaze so much on the external, the other, to really turn our attention inwards, it's like, who do I become? Who am I in this relationship? What are the positive qualities and energies and emotions and experiences that I believe I would experience if I were already in this relationship? Because ideally what we want to do is be vibrating as if it were true already. We want to live it now. And so it's kind of the mystery and the magic of the law of attraction is really that we need to already become that which we seek to be. And at this root, what that means is self-love practices. Because if I'm identifying that I want relationships and I'm assuming that if I were to be in my ideal relationship, that I would feel wonderful and joyful and confident and safe, whatever those words are for you, I'm identifying a need that I have. And this is a big part of the work that I do in the lineages that I sort of the knowledge traditions that I come with, particularly Tantra, which is about this idea that really the journey of love and relationship is not just to have someone outside of ourselves to kind of buffer us from the outside world or to fill us up and make us feel good. Because when we live that way, then we use our relationships in a very codependent way. What happens is we fall trapped to this belief that, you're supposed to make me feel good and I'm supposed to make you feel good. This ultimately is this scarcity place where I'm not whole alone. So how can we actually love ourselves enough, be so content? It's like know how to date yourself in a way that you can meet those needs. You know how to give yourself energetically that feeling that you feel comfortable spending time by yourself, that you're not constantly distracting yourself by your phone or going out with your friends. Like you have this ability to actually be with yourself and enjoy your own company. So really, And most of us have unresolved emotions that are waiting for us to kind of take some time out and come home long enough and care about ourselves long enough for them to kind of start knocking. And most of us kind of unconsciously sense that they're there, and we don't want to look at them. We don't know what to do about them. So we can keep ourselves super busy, whether that's workaholism, social media and entertainment, partying, and chasing sex and relationship. It's a common one that we create drama outside of ourselves rather than looking at something inside of ourselves. So all of that is to say that when you're focusing on, let's say, using the law of attraction to call in your ideal relationship, it can be a way of subconsciously reaffirming, I'm lonely, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough. So it's like we have to be aware of those emotions and not just try to ignore them and suppress them and deny them. This is where we spend a lot of time teaching kind of emotional tools that support us to deal with those vibrations and to look at them, to love them, and to understand that they hold gifts. They're kind of messengers. If we have those skills, we can be with those emotions as they come up, and then we can hold space for them. And actually, by bringing ourselves home, by bringing ourselves present and listening to those emotions, that in and of itself is such a great act of self-love. It's so transformational. It actually is dating ourselves. And what that does is that starts to totally change our nervous systems. It brings this spaciousness, this sense of trust with ourselves, because this is the key relationship. The most important relationship is the one that you have with yourself. And if that relationship is good, then your cup is full. And that's not to say that you don't necessarily still desire a relationship outside of you, but you come from a very different place. And energetically, you come from a totally different place. When your cup is full and then overflowing, that you have actually life force and love to give to someone else. That's very different than wanting a relationship because I feel so empty and I hope that this relationship will be the thing that will finally fill me up. So if we start to understand how the law of attraction is an energetic vibration, then it gives us these keys to see what self-love work we need to do so that we can get to that overflowing cup.
So good. We in this group, we talk a lot about our emotional guidance system as a way to let us know when we're in alignment with the things that we're calling in. And those things could be money, the ideal house, the ideal partner. I want to just quickly ask you a question. What are some of the emotions that we might be feeling and are labeled that we might want to pay attention to, and what do they signify? So, for example, what are some of the inverted commas negative emotions? And I say inverted commas because we don't have negative emotions. We just have emotions, and they're like you said, they're all gifts for us. But what are some of the ones that we should look out for as potential signs that there's something we should be paying attention to?
All of them. I love what you said about there are no such thing as negative emotions. And I get that can seem crazy to many of us when we first hear it. But the logic behind that is that emotions are part of our human technology. And they are crucial messengers coming through you to give you little packets of energy and information and wisdom that you need. But unfortunately, we've been taught that emotions are negative, quite a few of them, that they're bad, that some of them, we're also taught that they're kind of dangerous, and that if we experience them, it may even make us a bad person. They can have a whole moral judgment. So for many of us, particularly emotions like anger and rage, grief, depression, shame, we spend all of our life force doing everything we can to avoid feeling these challenging emotions. Now, I'm not saying they're easy. So a reframe is to try to get clear on what their gifts are. So they all have gifts. I would say, for example, sadness is a messenger that arises to let us know that we're clinging to something that we need to let go of. Now, that could be a relationship, but it could be an idea or a way of doing something, like a habit. So when we start to feel sadness, instead of trying to, shove it down, whatever your favorite way is, distraction, this healthy self-love and inner marriage work is to turn into the emotion and to welcome it, to listen to it. This isn't a mental process, I want to be clear. And I think that's another key mistake, that we often try to implement the law of attraction just with our minds and our imaginations. It's like we want to feel, we want to bring the fullness of our human technology, and we want to align all the different systems. So the breath is the biggest key. It links all the systems. So if we can bring our attention to our emotional body, and we can use breath, and we can use sound, and also the body, we can use movement, we can get the gifts and the insights and the wisdom of what, for example, with sadness we may need to let go of. And we can also shake that vibration through us, which is different than trying to shake it out of us. So we're not at war with our emotions. We're not trying to get rid of them. Another emotion, let's say anger. Anger is often linked to a boundary that's been crossed. Often, for example, there's soft anger, which many of us just miss the signs, myself included. So I could be getting impatient or irritable, short-tempered, on a much softer level. And that's early warning signs of the same message, that something's being crossed. For example, I could be talking to someone, and actually my need for the preciousness of my time is being crossed. Usually I'm the one crossing my own boundaries, just for clarity. Usually it's us that's doing the boundary crossing. And that is a sign for me that actually I value my time, and this isn't in alignment with how I want to be spending my time. So it's just an example. So again, those are just two emotions that we often do everything to resist. But if we learn to listen to them, we don't need to fight ourselves so much. Yeah.
Those are also indications as well that you might not necessarily be in your authenticity. That boundary piece and the part that you've explained right now, of like where you are feeling like you're in a conversation with someone that you actually don't really want to be in, potentially, is a boundary violation of your own, where you're not in your authenticity in that moment. And so you start to feel those levels of frustration, and then it's up to you to decide, like, is this a reasonable boundary, or is it just some story that I'm running that I need to rush to the next thing or whatever? It's such an important part to pay attention to these emotions and to see them as the messengers that they are. I want to quickly ask one other thing. You used a word there called inner marriage. Are you able to just, in a simple way, explain what an inner marriage is? What does that mean?
So this is a concept that is used in a few traditions, but in the tantric tradition, it's this understanding that you could call it yin or yang. There's so many different energy signatures. They come down to two, and they eventually come into a union, which is the root meaning of yoga. And this inner marriage is symbolized in some traditions as the masculine and the feminine energies, which exist in all of us, independent of our body types, our sexual preferences. So ultimately, there's a way of bringing these two seemingly polar energies into union within ourselves. So when we talk about this inner marriage, it's part of a spiritual practice. It's also got sort of philosophical components of understanding that, yes, your outer beloved is a representation of yourself trying to integrate all the different aspects that live within us. So there's many ways you can work with these ideas, and it's, some people it really resonates with, and for some others it may not be any interest to you.
It's it's something we've been experimenting with, just to share with this audience, is that these various energetic signatures, they're sometimes called archetypes, and what that is that inside each of us, we have different energetic components. Some of them behave in a more masculine way. So, for example, the part of me and Araminta that are strong at planning and moving forward with things tends to be a more masculine type of energetic signature, where there's a part of both of us, and this can be for people in male bodies and in female bodies. They have sort of more feminine characteristics, this idea of being able to let go of things, attract things in, be paying a little bit more attention to emotions. Wanting to look good, for example, could potentially be sort of a feminine archetype. And it's something we've been talking about quite a bit, is identifying these various characters in ourselves and treating them as standalone people. Are they getting enough airtime? Have they got enough of a voice? Are we listening to our inner child? I've spoken about that before. That's an archetype. And this inner marriage is an interesting concept in bringing together these various components of ourselves as a way to integrate ourselves. So it's a really, really powerful tool that Araminta taught me, and it's made such a big difference. And it's something we'll unpack a little bit more in the next webinar, which we'll talk about in a bit. What's the next thing that you see, Minta, that people get in their own way about, or mistakes that people make in trying to create relationships or authentically relating?
So I think one of the biggies is actually what's on the screen now. Most of us are blocked in receiving. So I want to unpack this a little bit more, because there's a few key pieces that I haven't mentioned yet. So again, going back to this, like, it's an assumption that we all want relationships. But if we haven't really kind of dropped inside ourselves, often when we name a desire, there's all kinds of blocks, or let's say unheard fears about actually getting the relationship, let's say, or the money, or whatever it is that you're calling in. And so, for example, let's say I think I really want a relationship, but actually I'm terrified of having someone move in and losing my independence, or losing my having to share space and not sleeping well, whatever it is. So there's this need to constantly journal and to give ourselves permission to really identify what's our fear of getting what we say we want to have. Because until those fears are given some space, it's like they're still there, even if we're not being fully conscious of them. And they're vibrating, and they're giving the universe a different vibration signal. So you can have conflicting energy signals that you're sending out at all times. So that's a biggie. Have you really been honest about the fears that you have? And welcome them, because they're not your enemies. Fear is a beautiful emotion as well. I know it's demonized a lot, and it's often considered the opposite of love. I do not believe that. Fears often show us, it's like a survival protector part of ourselves that is, again, linked to things that are important and valuable to us. So if we can learn to identify those fears and see what needs we have and own that they're true for us, it may end up tweaking and giving us more specific information around exactly what we want to call in. So maybe my new desire is I'm calling in a partnership with somebody who lives super close to me and loves their own space as well, so that I always feel in my ease about needing my own space, or someone who I sleep beautifully with next to, and I always sleep deeply and easily. But until we've identified that and addressed its needs, it'll be out there in the background, like some kind of virus on your computer, sending out a signal that's slowing everything else down. Another challenge most of us have about receiving is this micromanaging. And what I mean by that is...
Sorry, you broke up there. Just say that again. Just say that last sentence
again. If you're using the law of... So the second point was micromanaging is often something that we do if you're involved in manifestation, using the law of attraction. What I mean by that, and the way it can block us, is many of us understand the law of attraction is to like attracts like, to visualize what we want, to live as if it's happening. So maybe I am actually filling myself with self-love and really meeting myself and feeling very abundant, and yet I can get caught up in worrying about, where is this partner? How am I going to meet them? Like trying to figure out. It's like I see the law of attraction as like we're in co-creation with the universe, and we have our part to play, and the universe has its part to play. And sometimes we micromanage and try to do the universe's part as well. And really what that does is it sends out conflicting messages, because there's an alignment of trust that is needed. There's an alignment with surrender that is also needed for the universe to be able to bring us what we're calling in. And this is a tricky one, So if we catch ourselves worrying or in disbelief, the message we're giving out is that we don't trust our own creative capacity. We're not trusting ourselves, or we're not trusting the universe as well. So those are the kind of messages it can give out. So it's always a reminder when we catch ourselves to do that, to come back, to see the perfection in the present moment, which is a key part of the law of attraction as well. So it's like, wow, even if my partner's not here now, I'm so grateful for this moment, because I can see that I'm growing, right? I'm getting clearer on what I really desire. I'm noticing these patterns. I'm catching myself earlier. There's always something that we can honor now, and then surrender and let the universe do its part. One more way that we definitely block how we receive is we haven't created space for it. And what I mean by that was, nature abhors a vacuum, which is another key part of this law of attraction. So we need to make space. We need to make space in our hearts and in our minds and in our emotional body for the new to come in. And what that means for many of us is healing work. That for most of us, perhaps there's still some armor over our hearts based on past difficult experiences with love and relationship. Many people are still kind of burning in very strong emotions concerning their ex, whether that's resentment, resentment, anger, hatred, or they're still in love, like they're still clinging. So if I say I want someone new to come in, but I still have all these energetic entanglements, there isn't really space for the universe to come in. I'm not really open to receive. So that's a huge way we sabotage.
Yeah, it's the word we sometimes use in this group has been decluttering, really making space for it. That idea of the analogy of it waiting for your beautiful new sports car to arrive, and you've ordered it and it's being released off the low bed trailer. And as you press the button to open up your garage, it's just filled with junk and old boxes and a couch that you don't sit on anymore and a bicycle with a flat tire. And there's just no space for the thing that you're calling in. So yeah, decluttering is an important part of the entire process. Everybody that's in here, let us know that you are enjoying this. We've got one or two questions coming through. Araminta's got a couple more points to unpack, and then we're going to move to some questions. What's the third thing, Minta, that you see people doing that blocks the flow of relationships or right relationships flowing into their world?
I think this healing from the past, and we talked about it just now in decluttering, it can, but I want to underline it because it's so fundamental. we're such fascinating creatures to me. One of the ways that, let's say, if I've had a very intense experience or imprint from a previous journey around relationships, so let's say if a partner cheated on me, it can activate these core wounds. And in my experience with sort of our psyche and healing trauma, this idea of kind of two core wounds that most things trigger can kind of be traced back down to one of these two. And one of them is I'm unlovable, and the other is I'm powerless. And we spend so much energy doing everything we can not to feel these two core wounds. So often, if we've had a traumatic relationship experience in the past, where let's say a partner cheated on me, so now I have my core wound is linked to that particular pattern. So I'm unlovable, and my partners will cheat on me. Even if I feel like, oh, that relationship was, a decade ago, so much has changed, I'm a different person. Occasionally what happens is we sabotage ourselves unknowingly because that vibration is still active in our psyche. And I'll explain why, because I know it's not the best news. What that could look like is unconsciously, I'll find people, I'll be attracted to people that are most likely to repeat that pattern. So our unhealed past and our unresolved emotional kind of baggage is wanting to be seen. It's wanting to be felt. It's wanting to be integrated. And what it will do if we're not giving it our own attention is it'll kind of call in energetically a similar situation so that those feelings come up again, and we have another chance to feel them and to heal them. So if you're one of those people who is seemingly stuck in some kind of repeating loop, it could be a repeating argument or a pattern from one relationship to another relationship to another relationship. And, it's like the people keep changing, and yet there's something energetically that's looping. Then almost always that's a signal. And instead of seeing it as a burden upon you, get curious, because the good news is there's power there. Shamanically, there's energy there. It's like there's a stored energy not waiting for you. And if you have the courage to go down and unpack it and feel it, it's got wisdom for you. Like it's got some messages. And this is the work, but it's also the expansion. And every time we're courageous enough to go back and look, we feel so much better once this energy block has moved. And of course, we get the benefits of the block being now part of our energy field and part of our flowing, moving energy field that makes us so much more vibrant. It makes us a more powerful creator. And then we're going to manifest that match. So we're going to get out of that pattern. We're going to have much more beautiful patterns.
So strong. Those are great. I want to quickly jump into a question that I've seen coming up here in the group. Somebody said, how do I balance the masculine energy in my inner marriage from the masculine energy that I give off? Like, is that related? Is there something that you can share that relates to creating balance between this inner marriage of masculine and feminine?
Ooh, yeah, beautiful question. I suppose I'm curious a little bit. What I'm hearing is, I guess I'm not 100% clear, so maybe write more, but are you feeling like you give off too little or too much masculine energy and you want to kind of balance it with feminine?
Let's go with that. That's what it sounds like. Yeah, like a too strong a masculine presence. How do you balance that?
Okay. Well, first of all, just to celebrate, healthy masculine energy is so needed on the planet right now. So we celebrate our masculine energy. Now, it may be that there's aspects of kind of what I call a sort of more unhealthy masculine energy that you're not so in love with, and you want to kind of give it some space, what that can look like is, impatience, getting a little bit too goal fixated, kind of finding yourself in competition, judging, being a little bit authoritative. So yes, one of the ways we can balance that is to first love that part. I know it sounds contrary, but love and acceptance softens everything. Let it be seen. There's some need underneath there, whatever the part that you're kind of finding is maybe causing challenges for you. It's often a protector. And what I mean by that is often when something's challenging has happened to us in the past, like a little part of our psyche becomes like a bodyguard. And it can be a little bit aggressive in the world in order for us to not feel something. So this is part of a longer conversation. In order just to balance it as far as the feminine, I mean, some of the ways Gareth and I work with it in our partnership is to give it a character. Like, identify this part of you with a name and do it in a loving way. So don't just demonize this part, but say, okay, wow, here's this part of me again. And then ask it, what does it need? What is it really trying to achieve? And just to bring consciousness to it, because often when we shine that spotlight of awareness directly onto this character, it kind of loses some of its power in a healthy way. And we can really discern and then make more empowered decisions. As far as making sure that, so bottom line, patience, presence, breath, love, acceptance, and curiosity about what's the deeper need or the deeper goal that this part is trying to achieve. And then really inquiring, like, is there what other way could I potentially express myself or give something to myself right now without trying to get it from the outside? Or maybe there's an empowered request that I can make of my partner now that I've taken the time to notice, okay, there's this character again. And that probably means that I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. And maybe I need to ask for some support or ask my partner to give me some loving words of affirmation, So I hope that's helpful.
I think that is. It's been a powerful part of our co-creation and our partnership. And the question was also, how do I get more of this feminine energy to come out? And it's done the same way. Minta suggested this process of identifying this masculine part. Who is it? Give it a name, and also have a look at the feminine part that probably hasn't been given a lot of space. I know for me in my journey, I was brought up in a world with very strong masculine sort of structure and framework. It was a default strategy for me. And I know that my inner princess, my inner feminine wasn't something that I even knew existed. I had no idea. And part of that meant that I moved in the world as a strong blokey bloke, very strong masculine, doing all of these things, but not very sensitive, not very in touch with my emotions. And I had a very similar challenge, but the ability to be able to create a persona for the masculine and the feminine and give them a name that suits them, and then treat them like people, because probably what's happening is that your inner feminine just doesn't feel like she has space. She's probably being bullied by the masculine, and that was very much what was happening for me. So that's a beautiful question, and giving those different personas, those different archetypes, a name and treating them like people is a really, really powerful way to be able to give them the space that they need and to integrate that inner marriage that Araminta was talking about. So I just want to quickly wrap up what we have covered here. This has been a super, super rich conversation. We have unpacked the 3 biggest mistakes that people make when using the law of attraction to bring partnership into their life. And the first one was that we're not able to own our desires. And for that, it means being super clear about what it is, first of all, that we want from a partner, that exercise of being true about what it is that we want, identifying, we call it orders, the orders that we've placed. What do I want my ideal partner to look like? What should he or she do? What should their interests be? Importantly, when you do this exercise, write down how you want to feel in your ideal partnership. Write down the positive emotions that you want to feel when your ideal partner comes in. And don't leave it there. I'd like you to also write down the things that you would like your partner to feel when you show up. This is a co-creation between two people. And I spent a long time writing down everything I wanted on the list from my partner. Then I sat and waited. And it was like, that's nice. And there's two people here. You need to show up for the other person in a similar way. So how do you want the other person to feel in partnership? So owning your desires is a first important step. And then when you move into a potential partnership, even if you're in an existing partnership, create a space where you're really able to own your desires and tell the other person exactly what you want and hear from them what it is that they want from the partnership. So number one is we don't own our desires. The second one is we haven't done the decluttering. So it was this idea of not being able to receive properly because we have got some enmeshment to our ex-partners. We have got, maybe some story running. We need to pay attention to those by using our emotions and go through the process of doing decluttering. And I think this is especially in relationships, it's something that takes almost a week to do, a week-long full-time retreat, doing 12 hours of work a day at an Easter retreat to understand this process of decluttering. So we've only really touched the surface of decluttering in this live stream. And Araminta's got something she's going to share with you after this, which is going to deeper dive into some more practical tools about how you can go through these emotional exercises to celebrate and let these emotions vibrate through you, to take the gold from them and to do the decluttering so that you're properly ready to receive whatever it is that you're calling in. And hopefully you've done step one and been very clear about your desires and what you're calling in. Then you've done the decluttering to be able to make space for your new sports car. She may be a she or a sports car or a he, but in manifestation, just whatever it is that you're calling in, that you've got space for that. And then lastly, we haven't healed from our past. We haven't got we haven't gone through the process of letting go of those old stories that might be creating the repeating patterns that we often see. We've got different people showing up in our lives, but they've got they've got very similar patterns and relationship traits to what we've had in our past. So those are the three tools that Araminta sees in 15 years of doing this work. I want to say before we quickly talk about the manifestation masterclass that Araminta is going to be offering, that I'm super grateful for the journey that you and I have been on, Araminta. It's been it's super rich. We both put a huge amount of work into our connection, and relationships are a continual dance. I don't want anybody to think that it's like you do the 3 steps, we're sharing some ideas here, and then you sit back and relax. Relationships are continually showing up, continually being there for one another. And sometimes this inner masculine and inner feminine component of showing up for one another requires showing up in a different way. And what I mean by that is sometimes showing up is just being in your authenticity and softening and saying, you know what, I'm having a terrible day, or I'm really frustrated about this. And instead of always trying to do, sometimes showing up is just being authentic and saying, I feel really uncomfortable with how you were in this situation with me. And so it's been a journey, and it feels like a really, really rich journey to have been on with you. And I'm super, super grateful for our dance and our co-creation so far.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah, it's so rich. And I think what you're really touching on just now is what I'm excited to talk more about in the masterclass, which is, love and relationships. Love is such a transformational force on this planet, and I don't feel like we really have been given the full understanding of its role, its evolutionary role on this planet. And when we understand what it's here to do, it fundamentally shifts our whole approach to love and relationships. So just as you're saying, it's a journey, and it's not just about finding that one Easter egg and sitting back happily ever after. And although that may seem like sad news at first, when you understand what love is really here to do, and get on board with that, then a much bigger adventure begins. So that's one of the key topics in the mastermind later this week.
Cool. So let's quickly jump into that. We started this off by saying there is so much to do and unpack about this topic. As you can see, just every one of these things, owning desires, doing the decluttering work and healing from our past is, yeah, it could be a week long just to unpack each of those. But what is it that you want to unpack in your masterclass, and what is it that people can get out of it besides, the deeper dive into the topics that we've spoken about here?
Yeah, so the masterclass is this Saturday. It's going to be a 90-minute workshop online. One of the things we're going to talk about is this sacred purpose of love and sexuality and relationships in general. The second thing I really want to focus on is how to support you to overcome fear, because we talked about, most of us don't own our desires and really create that foundation of authenticity because we're afraid of rejection. So I want to give you some powerful tools to no longer fear those no's. The third thing we're really going to look at is unpacking the past and how to support our healing journey. And that's going to be an examination of the power of our emotional body and making sure that you start to appreciate, if you don't already, every different flavor of your emotional body. So many of us are really terrified of our anger, or we're terrified of drowning in our grief, or we don't know what to do when we feel shame. So I'm gonna look at all those, and I'm gonna give you some tools that will help you. The fourth point is we're gonna look at the shadow, which is all of that stuff kind of in our unconscious that we don't know that is stuck there. I talked about one of those patterns. That, for example, when we select partners based on our trauma from our past, there's other ways that the shadow impacts our life now. And if you understand it, it's so helpful. And it can bring so much more compassion for yourself and for your partner. And stops a lot of fights, I also want to talk about, decluttering the past. So it's a huge topic, but it's so fundamental. So if you're not quite sure how you can create space, if you're aware that you've got baggage from past relationships and unresolved emotions concerning your exes, that one's going to be particularly rich for you. And finally, ultimately, the law of attraction is so powerful when we fully align all of our human technology. So once we understand how to align our mental body and our presence with our heart, and really start to get aligned with our emotional body, sex magic practices are kind of the most powerful, because our sexual energy is our creative energy. So I'm going to be explaining how to use that to really supercharge all the ways that you're using the law of attraction in your life.
So good. Thank you so much. It's this 90-minute masterclass, just to give you a sense, is a deeper dive into some of the topics we've touched on today. And Araminta's touched on overcoming fear, healing from our past experiences, understanding and tracking our shadows, going through this decluttering process, and then sex magic, how to use our sexual energy to speed up and turbocharge our manifestation journey. And just to give you a sense that this program is touching on things that are included in an ISTA training. Araminta does ISTA trainings for a week long that cost over $2,000 to attend. And a lot of that stuff is going to be unpacked in this 90-minute masterclass. If you are a Thrive member, livemoreperfectdays.com, you can register to become a Thrive member. They are our monthly members. This training will be free for you. It's going to take place in our other Facebook group called the Law of Attraction Summit. For those of you that are not Thrive members, you can grab a discounted offer to Thrive by going to livemoreperfectdays.com/love and become a Thrive member in order to access this content. It's happening this Saturday. If you're not sure whether Thrive is going to be for you, the cost for this training is $11 and 11 cents, 1111. That's synchronistic number that we see on our phones when we're in alignment with things. And as I said, you'll get so much value from it. And I want to just quickly articulate that this training is not just for those of you looking to bring in new partnerships. There's going to be value for you, even if you're in a long-term committed relationship. Many of us are in a partnership, but could take some time to go through the process of getting rid of some of the old stuff, whether you like it or not. There's definitely stuff hanging around, residual energetic stories from your past relationships that when you go through the process of decluttering and healing from those past experiences, you really enhance your current experience in a really, really powerful way. And if you've never taken the time to explore sex magic, some of the ideas of how you can use your sexual life force to be able to speed up your manifestation journey is really, really powerful. So if you're keen to jump into this masterclass with Araminta, it's happening this Saturday. Go to livemoreperfectdays.com/love and register for $11.11. If you want to get access to a whole lot more content about lifestyle design, including our core scaffolding program and our lifestyle design masterclass, that's a 30-day manifestation masterclass. That's all part of our Thrive membership. You can grab that on the same page. Choose which option works best for you. And we're looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible in this masterclass with Araminta on Saturday. Thanks, love. What else? Anything else I wanted to say before we sign out?
Well, just thank you all for your presence, and I hope it's been of use and some powerful takeaways that will serve you to live an amazing life filled with love. You're welcome to find more about me. You can grab me on my Facebook page. I have two, both under my name, and I've got some events for those of you that are interested in developing your feminine. I'm actually part of a very large online summit all about the feminine energy. So you can find out more about that on my Facebook pages. So hope to see many of you on Saturday.
And at the top of this group as well is a link to the Live More Perfect Days page. Even if you do nothing else, get on our mailing list, and I'll send you an email directly with Araminta's website and her Facebook group, as well as the other events that she's interested in, or rather partaking in. And then, you can connect with her there. I appreciate you all for being here. Thank you so much for checking in. If you know somebody that you think would benefit from watching this live stream, it's shareable. So feel free to tag them in the comments of this post, or share this onto your social media platforms. It also supports the work that we're doing. And appreciate you all so much for showing up. Until we see you next time. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.